Let me first, I'm just going to introduce one of the people who is really put all of this together, did a great job, worked really, really hard. Cannot thank him enough. I was telling him the other day, this is the easiest program I've ever had to do. All I did was make a salary. I can handle that. The Reverend Dr. Paul Wood grew up here in Camden and returned here 4 years ago in retirement. He is a United Methodist minister and served in churches throughout South Carolina for 37 years. The Revolutionary War in the South became Paul's hobby in retirement. He is a researcher and published author. He makes presentations around the state on Revolutionary War era heroine Dicey Langston Springfield, and next year the SC 250 Commission will publish Paul's biography of William Bloody Bill Cunningham. Paul's wife is Kay. She's here somewhere. She's also a United Methodist minister. They have children and grandchildren in both Camden and Sumter. So I'm now going to turn everything over to Reverend Paul.
Thank you, Ricky. Thank you so much. Ricky does a great job of chairing the Kershaw County 250 Committee. She has a strong staff here at the Visitor Center and more staff members who do a great job a mile or so up the road at the Camden Archives. Well, let me ask you, if you don't live in Kershaw County right now, would you raise your hand? Well, how about that? You Camden people you see. So let me say to you that the people in Kershaw County just prize the history, especially the Revolutionary War history of this part of the state. And you see that commitment to historic preservation and interpretation. You see it very clearly here, just across the way at the Historic Camden Foundation. All over this county, you see that commitment, that love for our history, but especially the Rev War part of our history. The Kershaw County 250 Committee works in conjunction with the South Carolina Commission on the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. We get to learn a word this morning, sesquicentennial. Pronounce after me, sesquicentennial. New word, it means 250th anniversary. So that's what we're doing throughout the state, and this county committee is very happy to work so productively with the state committee. The state commission will exist until 2033. That's because that's the last year of the Rev War, going back 250 years. See, next year, when we celebrate the 4th of July, that's just part of it. Part of it goes on and on till 2033. There are members, as Ricky said, who are present, members of the Kershaw County Committee. So let me ask you to stand. I see Catherine in the back. I see the inhabitants here. I see Joanna, Ricky. And in the back, you don't need to hurt your necks, but in the back are Sarah Murray and Nancy Neal. Good to see you all. Thanks. Now, it's a pleasure to introduce to you this man right here, Durant Asheville. He's an historian, an historical consultant. He's a Rev War tour guide, battlefield preservationist. He's also a nurseryman. Is that the one single word to summarize it? One word. One word, nurseryman. Okay. He lives in southern Greenville County, which is very close to Lawrence County, so he serves on both committees, Greenville 250, Lawrence 250. He's led the Lawrence County to establish a Revolutionary War driving trail, takes you to all of their sites, and they have more than you might think. He has led in the establishment of the Lawrence County Historical Museum. Durant has made dozens and dozens of presentations around the state, maybe other places too, about the Revolutionary War in so many different aspects of it. And he led the way to make it possible for the public to see the site of the Hayes Station Massacre. Now, that's not what we're here today to talk about, but that is a significant location in South Carolina on private property, but now you can get in there thanks to the grant and the SC 250 Commission. Now, there are not a lot of people in South Carolina who know about the snow campaign. We designed this program to teach you the reasons for the expedition, its events, its participants, and its long-lasting influence, significance. We felt that a lecture, even one offered by somebody as excellent as Durant, would not be enough. That wouldn't do justice to the snow campaign. And this is such a new subject to so many. So we have added fictional conversations to a traditional lecture. Fictional. But we can assure you that what we're communicating today is historically accurate. We've carefully researched these events and these people. We're not telling you tall tales, even though all three of the dramas are creative works. Here's something we need from you this morning. We really need it from you this morning. We ask you to see and feel these scenes with the powers of your imagination. It won't be enough to watch and listen. Use your mind's remarkable powers, okay? Feel the hatred building between people. Right here in this community, building between people. See what cannot be seen. Hear what can't be heard. Smell what can't be smelled. That's a new invitation. Shiver as the weather gets colder and colder. And wish you kick yourself if you hadn't brought heavier clothing. And to make the snow campaign realistic, really realistic, we would have needed 2,000 or maybe 3,000 horses. Okay, and I'm just getting started. We would have needed 50 or so horse-drawn wagons loaded with food for men and food for the horses. We would have needed maybe as many as 4,000 muskets and rifles and powder and bullets. We would have needed multiple creeks and streams with no bridges. Last but certainly not least, to make this program. I've got one more thing I wanted to say. If we could have made it totally realistic, we would have brought in the aromas. Okay, aromas of wood smoke and leather and sweat and gunpowder and horse poop. Last but certainly not least, to make our program here more realistic, we would have needed temperatures that were well below freezing and dark snow clouds looming overhead. So we checked our budget and we checked the weather forecast and, what happened? So we hope to stimulate your appreciation for our country's painful, violent birth. And also, and this might surprise many here, we want to stimulate your appreciation for the horrible Civil War that took place in South Carolina during the course of the American Revolution. The conversations that are coming up, they're works of fiction, but again, the events are real. And with the exception of the first conversation that you're about to hear, the people involved in these dialogues in 1775 were actual residents of the Camden District with names. They lived here in the Camden District. Now, we begin by listening to a mother and her 15-year-old son. Their conversation takes place on a farm within a mile or so of here. It is the middle of November 1775. And the boy, the young man, is going to mention to his mother the wealthiest and most influential man in the interior of South Carolina. That man was Joseph Kershaw.
Mama, I have made up my mind, and I'm going to join the Camden Regiment. It's Colonel Richardson.
Oh, no, you are not, Levi. You're not even 16. What would your father have said?
He would have said I'm a man of the house now, and I can make my own decisions. Mr. Coggins already told me my apprenticeship is over. With taxes on paint and glass, he can't stay in business.
Child, you are too young to go traipsing through the backcountry. There's gun-toting Tories, bandits. And what if the Cherokee gets sore at us again for taking their hunting grounds?
That's the point, Mama. Those men want to skin me, and I'm not going to let them. They've got it made with their big land grants and their trade with the Cherokee. They're sucking off the English teeth. Besides, we've got to show King George this is our land, not his.
But son, it's not so bad here. Maybe if we just lay low, everything will pass us by.
No, Mama. Do you see what they're doing in Boston? They blocked the harbor. They have soldiers quartered in every house. If they could do that over there in Boston, they could do that here.
But, child, in the 96th district, they're ready to start shooting. I can't have you dead like your daddy. Maggie and Annie's little hearts would break wide open.
I know, Mom. But Mr. Kershaw is looking for wagon masters, and I can handle a team of horses as good as anybody can. And Colonel Richardson's looking for men on his army. I can do that. I want to do my part. I might even start a hauling business one day.
You spoke to Joseph Kershaw.
Yes, Mama. And I'm going to take my squirrel gun and join the expedition.
Oh, no, you ain't, Levi. If you're gone this winter, the girls and I need that. It might be that squirrels is all he's got to eat this winter.
Fine. You take the squirrel gun, but I am going on the expedition. Can do it.
We'll introduce the actors better at the end of the program this morning. Our second conversation takes place in front of Camden's first store. It was built and owned by Joseph Kershaw, the man for whom this county is named. Joseph Kershaw was a young Englishman who crossed the Atlantic, came to Charleston in the mid-1750s. He brought with him two younger brothers, and before long, he and at least the next younger brother had moved to this community upstream, way up the Wateree River, called Fredericksburg. What Kershaw did as a young man was to learn the mercantile business, and he became adept at milling grain. So in 1758, so not long after he got here, he relocated to Camden, but it was called Fredericksburg at the time. Soon after he arrived, he convinced the residents of this village to rename it and give it a new name, Pine Tree Hill. And that's Pine Tree Hill through those doors up on the hill there, where the big house is. The town had a very good location on the Wateree River, so it was just a mile or so from here, that direction. Boats could leave Charlestown and carry goods upriver to Camden. No dams, no lakes. Local farmers would bring their freshly harvested crops to his mill, crops like wheat, oats, barley, and corn. Then his employees would mill the grain so that they could be turned into oatmeal, grits, breads, things like that. People around here consumed it, but tons and tons of it were shipped back down the rivers to Charlestown and then around the world. So Joseph Kershaw had a store and he had a grain mill, but that was not enough for this very industrious man. He opened an indigo works. He opened a brewery. Getting excited, he opened a distillery. He built a warehouse. These operations were clustered together on Meeting Street, and that's just a few hundred yards in that direction. Kershaw created partnerships with other businessmen. One of them was his brother Eli, and Eli set up a store and that kind of thing up the road, what is now Highway 1 in Cheraw, South Carolina. Another partner he established things with was James Chestnut. And working with Chestnut, they bought land in what later became Columbia and Casey. And there they built another store and they built another warehouse. And at pretty much that same location on the river, the Congaree River, right below where the Saluda and Broad come together, there was a ferry run by a German immigrant named Friday, so it was called Friday's Ferry. In 1775, tensions were rising, not only here, but in all 12 of the other colonies. Many people wanted independence from England, and it's important to know that they at that time did not call themselves patriots. That might be hard to remember. They weren't patriots at that time. They were Whigs with a capital W. Opposing them were South Carolina's loyalists, loyal to the king, and they were also called Tories. And these people, and there were a lot of them in South Carolina, had some very sensible reasons to remain loyal to King George.
Thank you.
1775 was the critical year, and everyone here had to make a choice. Kershaw stood with the Whigs, and because of that stance, he proposed that the name of the town, Pine Tree Hill, be changed again. So they named the town after a member of Parliament, a lord in Parliament, who wanted the colonists along the eastern seaboard of North America to have more rights and privileges. His name was Lord Camden, so the name was changed. Now, South Carolina had a succession of royal governors. They were sent here by the king, of course. They were not elected. The Whigs wanted to be rid of the royal governors. And in 1775, in defiance of Royal Governor William Campbell, the Whigs created their own elected body called the First Provincial Congress. So who did the voters of the Camden district choose to represent them in the First Provincial Congress? Of course, Joseph Kershaw. But there was a second opening, and that person voted in, lived downriver from here. You wouldn't believe this, but he lived near the junction of the Watery River and the Congaree River, where they become the Santee, and that was also still in the Camden district. That man was a veteran of the French and Indian War, a distinguished military commander, an accomplished businessman who owned oodles and oodles of acres down that way. He was Colonel Richard Richards. Now, for loyalists, the idea of independence was ridiculous. They pointed out that rebellion against one's king was treason. So when the Revolutionary War came to South Carolina, the people of this state were pitted against each other. There was not just violence beginning against redcoats in the British Navy. Violence was about to begin between South Carolinians, you see. They were beginning to prepare for battle against one another. More than any other state in what eventually became the 13 states of the United States, more than any other, what was going on here was a civil war that took place along with Revolutionary War. In Camden, everywhere you went in 1775, there was mistrust, there was fear, there was growing hostility. So now, we are at Joseph Kershaw's store, again, not too far away over there. We're going to witness a terse or tense conversation between two actual residents of Camden. The woman is Mrs. James Moore. Her first name is lost to time, so we're going to call her Elizabeth this morning. But we know her husband James was a staunch loyalist, and that they had a large family. The man who talks to Mrs. Moore is William Lang. We know he was a Whig, so we favored the rebellion. He regards Mrs. Moore as being stubborn and deluded. Mrs. Moore regards Lang to be dangerous and seditious. Each one has reasons to distrust the other. So listen to their conversation and ask yourself, which side would you choose? Which side has the greater moral imperative? The date is November 15th, 1775, exactly 250 years ago and 1 week.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Lang, but I should like to enter the store.
Yes, Mistress Moore, is it?
Yes.
And where is your husband, James?
My husband's whereabouts are of no concern to you, Mr. Lang.
Why the harsh tone, madam? It's a simple question.
Has it come to this? Interrogations? Step aside, sir. I need not answer to a rebel. You lurk in seditious shadows. You're a known scoundrel.
Scoundrel? I think not, madam. It's the wealthy nabobs in Parliament who are both dishonest and unscrupulous.
What do you mean, sir?
They have taxed us repeatedly for the past 10 years. No direct representation in the Parliament. None. And you know, the problem with that, madam, is that there is nothing whatsoever in the fundamentals of British law that allow that. That is a direct violation of British law. And it began with the Stamp Act.
Repealed.
Then there were the Townsend Acts, which were...
All repealed. You sons of liberty made sure of that. Threatening government agents who were only trying to do their jobs. It is our lawful duty to pay the government's debts. But the sons of liberty choose to defy both Parliament and the King. Really, sir.
We had no choice. Now, the Parliament wasn't listening. We had no choice in this matter whatsoever. No direct representation. We took our concerns to the King. And what was his response? Nothing. And it was his duty to protect us from their abuses. And not all acts were repealed, madam. They kept the tax on tea. We all hated that one. You know that. The embargo on tea in Charlestown, that was the only way our voices could be heard. And the Tea Party in Boston, for the same reason. And what was Parliament's reaction to that? Punishment. Close the port. Let them suffer. Well, madam, what were we to do? Sit by and watch. Who's to be next? South Carolina?
Well, who has suffered from the destruction of private property? That tea left to rot in the exchange in Charlestown or thrown into Boston Harbor? Who will pay those owners for the loss of their goods? Not the sons of liberty. How many more shall be hurt by the acts of so few? It is criminal, sir.
The sons were protecting us from a tyrannical king and Parliament. You know that.
Protection. What protection? Where was the protection for poor Thomas Brown down in Augusta, burning a man's feet until he can no longer walk? Heaven preserve me from such protection.
Thomas Brown knew the consequences of his actions. He was a threat to our fundamental movement towards freedom. I stand on the principle of liberty and freedom, man, not tyranny. Ah, yes. I seem to recall this morning seeing your husband, James, on horseback with a group of known loyalists leaving town. Enough games, Mr. Small. Where are you? Where is your husband?
He is with Fletchell and Cunningham, men who are willing to risk their lives to maintain law and order. You are a seditious creature. My husband and I kneel before our sovereign and king. There is danger in taking a stand.
And there is greater danger in kneeling too long now. For if you and your husband James and your loyalist friends continue in your actions, then you best kneel before your almighty God and pray for your souls. For Kershaw and Williamson and other men of note are gathering for the storm that none of us can stop. And I'm afraid that if it continues, it could lead to bloodshed.
While I pray it does not come to bloodshed, surely that is not the way.
We shall see. We shall see.
Grant and I are going to lead us in some informal conversation right now. which side do you choose? Okay? Was it difficult to determine which side held the greater moral authority? Now, regardless of your choice, your decision today, which doesn't really matter, does it? Regardless of it, it was a brutal, violent war that lasted 8 years. And here in South Carolina, especially, it was neighbors fighting neighbors, friends against friends, sometimes brothers against brothers. It truly was a civil war here. Now, let's go back to Mrs. Moore for a moment. Again, an historical person and her husband. This brutality, she was especially victimized by it. We don't know her first name, so we just called her Elizabeth, but we know her husband was James. James Moore and his wife had at least 3 sons, and they were counted among 300 loyalists who were murdered in the Camden district during the war. So she lost her husband and 3 sons, and the killers in cold blood were patriots. Durant, on that note, let's see what their comments are so far this morning. We'll have this microphone with us.
We looking for questions?
Questions? Observations? Maybe they're surprised.
Yes.
One thing that I think is rarely brought out, but it was touched on here, was that the revolution is presented as a moral dilemma in terms of making a choice. How much of that was based on pocketbooks? The threat to the taxation was mentioned, but the threat to economic well-being is generally, in my opinion, what most people shed blood over.
I think that's a very good point. There's no doubt about it. So you're speaking in terms of economic terms, which I totally understand. And in the backcountry, the 96th district in particular, those pioneer settlers were there for prosperity, okay? Prosperity. This is pocketbook issues. But you cannot have prosperity without security. So in the backcountry, the 96th district, an overriding concern was security in the backcountry, which led to economic betterment. But I will be talking about this a little bit more later on. Security was a paramount concern, particularly in the 96th district. Yes?
When was the 96th district opened up for solar?
The 96th district was, well, actually, now y'all are getting into my discussion a little bit later on, but it was opened up for settlement in 1755 with the Treaty of Saluda. From 1755 to 1777, the 96th district was the frontier of America. These were first time. I'm going to be getting into that in a little bit more detail.
And we'll show you the district boundaries too. Other thoughts and observations at this point? Yes.
What was the royal government presence around this area, around Camden?
The royal government's presence around here, around Camden, and you two get to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pointing at Joan and Glenn and Navaden, who are currently researching and beginning to write the book about what life was like when the British held this town. And they held it from May of 1780 till April of the next year, 1781. I don't imagine that there were ever British troops in Camden, ever, until the city of Charleston was taken by Clinton and Cornwallis in May of 1780, and then immediately Clinton dispersed significant numbers of his redcoats to significant places in South Carolina. The 2 most significant were Camden, the largest town or village in inland South Carolina, and 96. 96 was still a village, but it was on the Cherokee Trail, and it was the, shall we say, the county seat of this huge 96th district. Okay, so did I answer your question?
Okay.
Okay,
Were
veteran.
there like tax collectors? trooping
Well,
around?
okay, so in pre-Revolutionary War in South Carolina, there were 3 British officials. There was the governor, the attorney general, and the customs officer. Now, they had troops around the customs office in particular. There was a fort in the back country from 1754 to 1768, which later they were moved to New York. But only these 3 British officials and the ones who were tax collectors were Americans. They were South Carolinians. But with those 3 officials, the lieutenant governor, William Bull, for decades, because he wasn't British, he was never allowed to be the governor. He was always lieutenant governor. But make no mistake about this, there were warships in the harbor. So that was British control right there.
And over here.
Did the northern states have a sense of the Civil War that was going on down here?
To some degree, they did. For example, another hard story, in Connecticut early in the war, the Patriots took loyalists, the loyalists who would not yield, who would continue to pledge their allegiance to the king. And there was an old mine somewhere in Connecticut, and they would put them down into the mine and not let them out. Okay? Tarring and feathering did not begin in South Carolina, I don't think. I think it began as far north as Massachusetts. But it did happen here. It happened to the Mr. Brown that we heard mentioned earlier. They tarred and feathered him in Augusta or North Augusta. He made it clear he was not going to change his mind, so they tied him to a tree and set a fire, and held him above the ground on the tree and set a fire beneath his feet. Any others? Yes?
Were there any type of symbols or insignias or marks individuals would use to signify whether they were a Whig or a Loyalist?
Yes, there were. Now, you have to remember the militia. There was a strong Loyalist militia. There was a strong Whig militia. And all these folks, they were neighboring homesteaders, and they had one set of clothes a year. And they were all dressed the same. So this particularly came into play at Kings Mountain. If you were a Whig and you were fighting with the Whig militia, you put a white piece of paper in your hat. And that was it. That was your uniform. And if you were a Loyalist, you put a sprig of greenery. That's how you told one from the other. And there are numerous cases of mistaken identity throughout the war. Yes.
How big a role did the Church of England have play in the Revolution as coming through the Scots-Irish Presbyterian area? But if you go back to Whit Mason, who is
Church of England.
He kind of adheres to it about the animosity between the church. Did that have a big role in play?
Well, that's a big, big subject, as you know. And it's, for the most part, off subject here. I've not seen that religion at this point was playing much of a role in South Carolina. Now, in general, we can say this, that the Scotch-Irish or Scots-Irish, they didn't like the British. They were very happy to have gotten away from the British Isles and come to find some relative freedom over here. For example, freedom of religion. They were not pleased with English people. But some were. Some were fine with it. You see, it's very hard to generalize. When it came to the Church of England, the priest of the Church of England, and there weren't many except on the coast, they realized that they'd better get out of Dodge. They got on ships and went back to England. Priests in the Church of England were pledged to serve God and the king. There was no getting out of those two pledges, two commitments. So I don't think any of them dared to hang around in South Carolina. That's not a complete answer, sorry.
I understand.
Okay. We will turn things over as I switch to PowerPoint. to your rent.
Thank you, Paul. So, good to see everybody, good crowd we've got here. This is a photograph of a photograph, but this is the Canebrake Battlefield. This is in southern Greenville County, South Carolina. What you're seeing there is an alley of pecan trees that were planted in 1876. Those pecan trees are 145 years old. I had no idea pecan trees would live that long. They're planted in good old South Carolina bottomland, the most fertile territory, the most fertile land that we have in the state. So, wanted to give you a little bit of feel about, that setting in particular. I do happen to be the caretaker there, and really love spending time on this as well as all the other battlefields. So, as the Revolutionary War started, here you can see the 8 districts that South Carolina had. And I particularly emphasize the 96th district. The 96th district was established in 1770 after the Regulators' War. The Regulators' War was very successful in the fact that it did get these districts created. And the Regulators' War was a war over security as well, so that was very important. Notice, if you will, this is Cherokee territory. Greenville, Anderson, Pickens, and Oconee counties, Cherokee territory, 16 towns in Pickens and Oconee counties. And this is a big factor, and it's a difference with the 96th district versus the Camden district. Here in Camden, you had the luxury, I'm going to say, of friendly Catawbas, and did not have to worry about depredations to the same extent that these problems were arising in the backcountry in the 96th district. It was a terrible clash of cultures. The Cherokee mind and the European mind could not understand each other. And that misunderstanding had very deadly consequences, and that's part of the reason for this entire snow campaign. So, I'm gonna get where I can see what I got here. South Carolina, the United States was at war when this was occurring. We're talking about a period that begins in November of 1775. In April 19th of 1775, that's when Lexington and Concord occurred. Bunker Hill, Breeds Hill was in June of 1775. Shots were fired down in Charleston Harbor, were the first shots that were fired. That was a naval battle. So in the backcountry in June of, fall of that year, this is what was happening in the backcountry of South Carolina. Now we're talking about the snow campaign today. The snow campaign really was a culmination of 2 separate campaigns that were occurring in South Carolina. And the first campaign occurred when, this is 96, a wagon load of shot and powder was being shipped to the Cherokees from Charleston, shipped along the Cherokee Path all the way through, and it was going up to the Cherokee lower town capital of Kiowee. The Cherokee Path is a dry ridge throughout the state of South Carolina. Everything to the south of this path drains into the Savannah. Everything north of this drains into the Santee. So this was a valuable trade route. And the reason 96 is here is because that was a crossroads that would go down to Augusta. You could sail all the way from Augusta down the Savannah, down to the sea. So the Council of Safety wanted to curry the favor of the Cherokees by sending them shot and powder. Now, this is something that the British colonial government had done for many years. They shipped shot and powder to the Cherokees every fall for their fall hunt. And from that fall hunt, they would be collecting deer skins. And the Cherokee trade with deer skins and medicinal plants was very important. And the Council of Safety, the First Provincial Congress, they wanted to maintain that annual shipment and maintain good relationships with the Cherokees. However, the loyalists in the backcountry, they were saying that that shot and powder was being given to the Cherokees so that the Cherokees could go on the warpath and they would be slaughtering the loyalists, is how the loyalist argument was presented. Also, in the backcountry, during this time, one of the leading loyalists was a fellow named Robert Cunningham. He was quite a good military man. Robert Cunningham was appointed the Loyalist General of the state of South Carolina by Cornwallis in 1780. So he was quite influential, and he was really preaching against independence. And the Council of Safety in Charleston had enough of that, and they arrested him. And they arrested him, and they took him down and put him in a jail in Charleston. Robert Cunningham had a brother named Patrick Cunningham, who was also very influential. And Patrick Cunningham was the wealthiest man in the Little River District, which is present-day Lawrence County. And Patrick Cunningham wanted to rescue his brother. So he gathered a force of 60 men, and he was to go down to Charleston to release his brother from jail. That was not ever going to work. But as Patrick Cunningham was coming down the Cherokee Path to Charleston, he ran across that shipment of shot and powder that was being sent to the Cherokees. A half ton of lead, a ton of powder. And he captured that shot and powder. And then this was at Mine Creek, 18 miles below 96. So he came to 96. He came to 96, and this is kind of where he hung out. This attack at Mine Creek happened on November the 3rd of 1775. The Council of Safety heard about this on November the 7th of 1775. And on November the 8th, they set Richard Richardson with the task of quelling Loyalist activity in the backcountry. But in the meantime, while Patrick Cunningham has this shot and powder at 96, the Patriots in the backcountry, the Whigs in the backcountry, under Andrew Williamson, who had a plantation in Greenwood County. Andrew Williamson was the leading patriot in the backcountry, and he brought in hundreds of backcountry patriot militiamen to his plantation, which is referred to as Whitehall. Some accounts say he had 450 men, other accounts say he had 562 men. So while he was collecting his men, Patrick Cunningham was collecting men as well. And Williamson moved on 96 to confront Patrick Cunningham. This is the first siege of 96. This is first blood in South Carolina. So, as Williamson comes to 96, he goes to Savage's old fields and he builds a fort there. He fortifies that homestead. Between the barn and the house and the smokehouse, he created barriers and barricades and things like that. Well, as Williamson was coming into 96 with those men, the loyalists in the backcountry were collecting their armies full force. And these loyalist armies, under the command of Joseph Robinson and Thomas Fletcher and Richard Paris, they were collecting their men, and they surrounded Andrew Williamson. And a 2-day shootout occurred. James Birmingham was the first South Carolinian to die in the name of freedom in the first siege of 1775. And this is November the 19th through the 21st. This is what you had. You've got loyalist armies coming in, you've got patriot armies coming in, moving armies in the back country. The loyalists gathered an army of 1,900 men that were surrounding and besieging Williamson in 96. Well, we're going to go over the resolution of that here in a minute. Who were these loyalists in the backcountry of South Carolina? Joseph Robinson was a leader. Richard Paris, his plantation was on downtown Greenville, which is, he was there illegally, if you will. The Spartan District loyalists. Fletcher was from the Fair Forest District. Robert Cunningham, Patrick Cunningham, they lived on the Saluda River. This is Evan McBarn. He had a store here, and that was part of Richardson's journey into the backcountry. Thomas Brown in Augusta. These are the leading loyalists, and these loyalists were under orders to be arrested. The Council of Safety initiated Richard Richardson to lead a force to arrest these very individuals. And Richard Richardson was given the orders to start forming his army on November the 8th. And a 10-day period, this is at his plantation, a 10-day period from November the 8th to the 18th, his army was collected. He collected the Camden militia. He collected the Orangeburg militia. And at this time, he was sending out riders all over the state, telling everybody to come to his army, come into his camp. He sent riders up into North Carolina. The North Carolinians made a superb contribution to this campaign that was underway. Richard Richardson's original task was to arrest loyalist leaders. But during this time, the siege of 96 is going on. November the 18th, Richardson now is on the move, and he crosses the Wateree, and he crosses the Congaree. Now it takes the Congaree may have been flooded at this time, I don't know, but it took a long time to get across that Congaree. And here he is, he's going towards 96, and he's going to relieve that siege that's going on. Williamson, who is being besieged, who was surrounded by 1,900 men, he does not know that Richard Richardson is on his way. And Richard Paris and Joseph Robinson make a entreaty to Williamson that they would break the siege, because this is the first time that there was blood. They were not comfortable with absolute slaughtering each other. Most people wanted peace. So this treaty was established, and the treaty said that simply. The loyalists would just go retreat to the north side of the Saluda River, and Williamson was to break down his fort and abandon his fort. And in addition to this, they would lay down their arms and be neutral for 20 days on either side so they could talk to their leaders. And this was the arrangement that ended the first siege of 96. So Richardson got word of that treaty. Now remember, his mission is to arrest these loyalists. And now Williamson has done a treaty saying, no, we're all going to go home for 20 days. And Richardson said, I didn't agree to that treaty. And he kept on with his mission. And his mission was to come through across the Saluda. Now he's here. This is Evan McLaurin's store. Evan McLaurin was one of the leading loyalists. And while he was camped at that store, he was sending out patrols, and they were able to capture Thomas Fletchall. And they were able to capture Richard Paris as well. Moving on through, they're up to Camp Great Survey on Duncan's Creek in Newberry County, and Liberty Hill right in Lawrence County. During this time, the North Carolinians are coming in. And this group is growing and growing and growing all the time. Richardson gets an indication that Cunningham is somewhere up in here, in Cherokee territory. So he starts moving that way. And finally, on December the 22nd, or December the 20th, actually, he gets to Hollingsworth Mill in Lawrence County on Raven Creek. And at that time, Williamson's 20 days is up. His truce for 20 days is over now. And Williamson comes into Richardson's camp at Hollingsworth Mill as well. 4,000 to 5,000 Patriot militiamen now are at Hollingsworth Mill. This is the largest army that's ever been in western South Carolina. The largest army since Sir Sherman came through Colonial. But Kings Mountain did not have a total of 5,000. Cowpens did not have a total of 5,000. 96 did not have a total of 5,000. 5,000 men at Hollingsworth Mill. This is where the two campaigns come in together, because Patrick Cunningham, as a result of that siege being broken, he fled into Cherokee territory with most of the shot and powder. He went to the wildest, most remote area he could possibly think of, and that was a cane break. This is river cane, folks. The southern, southeastern rivers, bottomland was loaded in river cane. That was our most dominant plant. The Native Americans knew that anywhere that river cane grew, corn would thrive. That's why we don't have so much river cane today. It was all plowed under, it was all burned over, because that's the most fertile land in South Carolina. The water leaf was loaded in river cane bottoms. And this is the place that Patrick Cunningham went to for security. Cane breaks were traditional Native American defensive areas for centuries. Nobody can ever sneak up on someone in a cane break. The rustling leaves make entirely too much noise. So when Richardson got word that Patrick Cunningham was in the cane break in southern Greenville County, he picked his best men to go on a mission after them, led by the commander of the Orangeburg Patriot Militia, who was William Danger Thompson. quite a important, energetic, capable leader. And Danger Thompson had a total of 1,300 men. 750 of these men were from North Carolina. Why were North Carolina men being chosen to go on this fight here that's going on in South Carolina? That's a simple answer, really. They had the best horses. If you were going to come down from North Carolina to join with Richardson, you had a good horse. And those were the men that were chosen. They left overnight going up the banks of the Reedy River, and it was bitter, bitter cold. So this is a sketch, or plat rather, of where the Canebrake battle occurred. Now this is the Reedy River, and you can see this 1 mile, 640 acres square plat, and here it's defining where the Canebrake was. This plat was created in 1785. Richard Wynn, who fought at this battle, bought an acre or a square mile at the battle site, and he kept it for a year, and he sold it a year later to Samuel Harrison, who was also a veteran of the Battle of the Canebrake. The sale price on this property here was one black horse. So, Thompson and his men are coming up the Reedy, and they break and they go off both sides. Now, we've pretty well determined that this is the spot where Cunningham was camped. This is where I showed you that pecan alley that the Hopkins family planted. So, as Thompson and his men approached, they could hear the loyalists burning cane for warmth. And that river cane is chambered, and as you burn it, and those gases inside expand, it pops and it explodes, and it sounds like a battle's going on right then. So it's pretty easy to tell exactly where the loyalists were, and Thompson divided his men on both sides, and the idea was to get an encirclement. There's some question about how many loyalists were at this battle. Richardson's scouts indicated 500. We really think there's like 200 or 250 men here. So this is dawn of December 22nd, 1775. Cold, cold, cold. I cannot emphasize enough how cold that it was. And before the complete encirclement was realized, a sentry fired a gun, and then a general uprising started occurring. And Patrick Cunningham stuck his head out of his tent, and he could see the Patriot forces arrayed all around him, and he yelled out, "Shift for yourself." And he promptly jumped on his horse bareback. And Richardson says, "Bare breeches as well." So he jumped on his horse, and he rides up the Reedy River. This was a getaway point. And 70 others, at least, escaped as well. 130 of those men were captured. There were 4 or 5 loyalists killed. There was one patriot, 17-year-old Thomas Polk, wounded in the shoulder. The men had their hands tied behind their back. If they had a good pair of shoes, they were taken from them. And they were marched back to Hollingsworth Mill. As soon as they got back to Hollingsworth Mill, it started to snow. And it snowed like it's never been seen in the backcountry since, literally. Some reports say 15 inches. Most say 18 inches, some say 30 inches snow. And under these conditions, these men were marched down to Charleston, and many did not have shoes. There were bloody footprints in the snow. For the next 8 days, in order to lay down to sleep, they had to scoop the snow out of the way so they could even lay down. And as an aside, in December of 1775, this wasn't the only action that was going on in the War of the Revolution. During this time, the Canadian campaign was going on. And Richard, Benedict Arnold, and Daniel Morgan were attacking Quebec. If it's this cold in South Carolina, imagine how cold it is up in Quebec. So anyway, just want to let you know all the different things that were going on when this battle of the Great Canebrake occurred. And this is the battlefield as it is today. So I think Paul's ready for me to end. Are we asking questions now?
Yes, well, what I want is to make sure that our two actors for our final presentation are ready. They need to get in place. I want to invite everybody for 30 seconds to stand up and take a stretch break. 30 seconds. I think that'll do it. Let's have our seats now. Let's return to the seats. Do we have any burning questions right now? We're going to have a chance for a little bit more of the Q&A stuff later. We're entering now the third and final portion of our program this morning. There we go, here's a comment.
Referring back to the regulators, and of course moderators, the regulators disbanded in 1769. How many of those people were patriots in 1775?
Okay, we're not going into that this morning, but most folks here don't know what the Regulators' War or movement was. It was a time of violence that preceded the American Revolution in South Carolina. It was brought about by total civil disruption in the inland parts of South Carolina. There was no government. Can you imagine this place not having law enforcement, not having a highway patrol, not having magistrates, judges, juries? There was none of that in the backcountry of South Carolina. So this set off the moderators' movement that he's referring to, a regulators' movement, I'm sorry, and that did precede the events that we're referring to. That level of violence that was taking place in those days that he and I are talking about, that helped to set the stage for the violence that's getting underway in 1775. And let's stop at that. Okay, now behind you.
I have a simple question. We talk about snow, we call the snow campaign.
Yes?
When did the snow actually start falling?
Okay, you missed what Durant said. Well, no, I'm not just a minute ago.
Okay.
But maybe the door was shutting, I don't know. But we're coming back to it. That is too important of a question to have just one person answer. So you just bear with us here. When did the snow begin? That's what we'll get. And anyone else for now? Yes, in the far back.
What would be the disposition of the prisoners that were taken to Charleston? Were they hung? Were they...
No, that's a good question. None of them were hanged. By the way, those of you who are still in middle school and high school, you might think that the past tense of the word hang is hung, right? It's hanged. That's right. If you're going to kill somebody like that, you're hanging that person. You hang them. Okay. We're ready now to set the stage for our first scene in these 6 scenes of these conversations. We now begin a series of conversations between Colonel Richard Richardson and Major Joseph Kershaw. You probably think of Kershaw as a colonel, because he was, but at this time he was a major, so he was Major Kershaw. The two commanders have arrived at Friday's Ferry, which Durant has mentioned, and I need to take this down. That could confuse you. Just give me a second. They arrived at Friday's Ferry, which is modern-day Casey, South Carolina. Some have crossed the Congaree River, some have not. The date, if you two characters can hear me, this is their cue. The date is November 26th. They came from two different directions. Richardson has come probably starting from Charleston, but now from this place that you've seen on the map. Kershaw has come from Camden, where he's brought with him most of the members of the Camden District Militia. We hear now from Colonel Richard Richardson and Mr. Joseph Kershaw.
Good to see you, Joseph.
Good to see you, Richard.
I can see out there your long line of wagons. I marvel at your success.
Well, thank you, Richard. Business is good, but these are not all my wagons. Whig families in Camden District have loaned me dozens. And this is further proof that many in Camden District want freedom and liberty.
In every direction, we see freedom-loving men cooking over campfires. You and I have about 1,000 men. Colonel Thompson will arrive tomorrow, so our numbers will approach 2,000. Have you heard the news out of 96? Williamson held off Patrick Cunningham's siege for 3 days. Then they signed a dreadful treaty.
A treaty, you say? With all due respect to Williamson, he had no authority to sign such a treaty.
The details are very troubling. We have no assurance that the Whig leaders, like Patrick Cunningham and Thomas Fletcher, will stop harassing the Patriots. In fact, Cunningham has already broken the treaty. He has an army of hundreds.
So now that we're not needed in 96, what will we do?
We will leave tomorrow for the land between the Saluda and the Broad Rivers, the Dutch Fork. Other militia plan to assemble with us. In the Dutch Fork, we will try to pacify Loyalists and search for Thomas Fletcher.
Richard, I must rest. It'll take a lot of doing to get these men and horses across the river.
Patriot Colonel William Danger Thompson did indeed meet up with them the next day, November 27th. He commanded about 500 Rangers, meaning well-armed men on horseback. It took a week and a half to get everyone across the Congaree River, go up the Saluda River a little bit, and then across the Saluda River. But then they entered the Dutch Fork. The Dutch Fork is that broad fork of land where you have the Saluda River on your left and the Broad River on your right, settled by many, many German people. So when these Germans started moving in around these English-speaking people, they heard that they were Deutsch, that they were speaking Deutsch. So they called it the Dutch Fork. No, they were Germans, they weren't Dutch people. So now they're in the Dutch Fork. They're near the present-day town of Chapin. They've encamped at McLaurin's store. It is now December the 8th.
Joseph, you have been very busy ensuring that every man is fed. I have been occupied and greeting more regiments. The Spartan Regiment has joined us. Men from the new Acquisition District have joined us. Our numbers are now approaching 2,500.
Enthusiasm is rising high, but I worry. I hear many men speaking of blood revenge.
Joseph, our officers must constantly emphasize restraint and leniency. Cruelty by our men will not be soon forgotten by victims or their families.
Did I see prisoners being led to Charlestown today?
Yes, my friend, I sent 10 prominent Loyalist offenders for trial. However, we have yet to locate the worst. So I've dispatched Colonel Thompson to Flying Fletcher and others like him.
You don't expect more arrivals, do you, sir?
Oh, yes. I expect hundreds of North Carolinians any day and more citizens of this province.
I should have enough food for every man and fodder for every horse. But if this cold does not let up soon, they will curse me for not bringing coats.
4 days have passed now. It's December 12th. Richardson's expeditionary force has gone up the Broad River. Those with horses have been riding. Those who are on foot have been walking or sat in wagons or maybe sat behind someone. Now they're encamped on Duncan's Creek in Newberry County, and the weather is even cold.
Joseph, have you seen the new prisoners? Colonel Thompson has brought in Richard Paris, Thomas Fletcher, and many more.
Congratulations, my friend. The Council of Safety will be pleased.
I am giving my son the honor of delivering these deplorable men to confinement and trial in Charlestown.
Our ranks continue to grow. We are a remarkably strong army.
Many more than I anticipated. As we stand in this field, you and I see only a fraction of our men in arms. More are out in the forest. The breeze from the north chills my old bones, but the winds also bring me the aroma of beef and pork and corn roasting over campfires. Our sheer numbers demonstrate to all who are loyal to the king that their allegiance is misled. Joseph, I am certain you have distributed my reminder to your captains about taking revenge. I will not permit any such acts. Tomorrow we will begin our pursuit of Patrick Cunningham.
Colonel Richard Richardson left Duncan's Creek then and set out for Ravens Creek. Durant has already been through the movement here. He's talked to you about how other groups came down from the Charlotte area, from the Spartanburg County area, from the York County area. It's growing and growing. They arrived at the lower end of Ravens Creek and the Reedy River. He's told you about the canes on the river. By this day, it's now December 20th, Richardson has under his command somewhere, and he's lost count, somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 men. No one imagined that so many patriots would gather together to quell the Loyalist movement. They've encamped at Hollingsworth Mill on Ravens Creek.
Joseph, this frigid air is almost unbearable, and I am well clothed. Many of our men made no preparation for this weather.
Richard, they look with envy on my warm attire. I wish I had coats and shoes for them, but this extreme weather has come as a painful surprise.
Joseph, I've informed the Council of Safety that more and more loyalists have come to us with requests for forgiveness. Our immense number strike terror in their hearts. However, we have yet to deal with Patrick Cunningham.
Are we ready to battle with him?
My scouts tell me he has about 500 men. They've camped in a large cane brake on the Reedy River. You and I have almost 10 times as many. Therefore, I have ordered Colonel Thompson to gather only enough men to cover the final 15 or 20 miles. They will leave before sundown tomorrow and travel by night, and they hope to ambush him at sunrise.
I wish I could go along, but I'm needed in camp.
Now it's December 23rd. 3 days have passed. The Army is still at Ravens Creek. Earlier that day, Colonel Thompson and his 1,300 men returned from their battle at the Great Canebrake.
Joseph, you have more mouths to feed. Colonel Thompson has brought us 136 prisoners. Thompson reported that he and his captains had to prevent their men from taking revenge on the Loyalists. There is much bad blood in South Carolina, and I am afraid nothing good will come from this. Colonel Thompson's easy victory surprised me. The battle ended in less than 10 minutes. Regrettably, Cunningham and more than 100 others escaped. They are deeper in Indian territory now.
Well, this is marvelous news, Richard. I feel certain Cunningham will be caught. But have you noticed the snow is beginning to accumulate in this frozen ground?
Now, our sixth and final scene is Christmas Day, 250 years ago. Richardson's army is still at Hollingsworth Mill on Ravens Creek. The snow fell for 30 hours.
Joseph, welcome to my tent. My horse has taken me through this white stuff to speak to my officers everywhere. It's up to men's knees and higher. Not a soul is having a happy Christmas.
Now, snow can be beautiful, but not when we're without shelter. I favor a hearth fire with my family close by, especially on a day like Christmas. In snow this deep, few have been able to build a fire. Everything is muffled except for the few crackling flames that they have been able to build and men stomping their feet to avoid frostbite.
This morning, I delivered favorable news to the North Carolina regiments. Today, on Christmas Day, they can leave for home. And as can the Spartan and the new acquisition regiments. Unless the snowfall resumes tomorrow, the rest of us will leave as well. Only the horses will find it easy to walk through this stuff.
So shall we return to Friday's ferry?
Yes, God willing. Once there, I will send Colonel Thompson with our prisoners to Charlestown. At Friday's ferry, you and I will go our separate ways.
I look forward to returning to my home in Camden and my wife and children.
I too can imagine returning to my warm home on the Santee.
And they're now finished. I'll say a few more words about our actors in a few minutes. Years later, the campaign, the veterans were calling it by different names. For example, the snow camps. But years later, they settled in on calling it the snow campaign. There was a terrible problem that afflicted these men and the prisoners that we've heard about. Frostbite. And frostbite, in some cases, is so serious that it leads to amputation. So for these young men, many of them lost fingers and toes at a very early age as one of the results of the snow campaign. But it was successful. It put a stop to all Loyalist action in South Carolina, put a stop to it for about 4 years. I mentioned the Cunningham brothers earlier, that they had to stay passive. Most Loyalists had to stay passive until the British took Charleston in May of 1780. Then, as we've said, they came up here and they posted hundreds of soldiers in Camden in 96, and they really controlled the state for a while. As we all know, thousands of patriotic people, led by people like Nathaniel Greene, Andrew Pickens, Thomas Sumter, Francis Marion, they eventually pushed the British back to Charleston, and at the end of 1782, the British sailed away. Through 8 years of war, the people of this state and the 12 other states made a lot of sacrifices. Americans on both sides of the war, as we see now, suffered immensely. And I think that the snow campaign serves as a perfect example of the indelible imprint of civil strife and loss and suffering that afflicted not only people in South Carolina, but up and down the eastern seaboard. In the next century, the 19th century, an historian named George Bancroft, not a South Carolinian, but Bancroft wrote the history of the entire United States. And he wrote these words about this state. Left mainly to her own resources, it was through the depths of wretchedness that her sons were to bring her back to her place in the Republic, South Carolinians, having suffered more, dared more, and achieved more than the men of any other state. A place with liberty and justice for all was the end result. Let us now introduce the actors to you so that you can greet them one more time. And wait a minute, let's see if they got questions right now, Durant. Okay. And then we'll leave the actors just waiting. Y'all deserve it.
Yes.
They mentioned several times the new acquisition districts, but it's not been on any map. Is that up near Charlotte area?
Yes, it is. It had to do with the screwy deal right here with the state of South Carolina. We were supposed to go all the way up to the 35th parallel and go straight across, but about this point right here in 1729, the surveyors ran across a whiskey still. So that's where they started. And then when they started surveying the Catawba Reservation, they realized they ran this line due west, and they realized that they ran right into the Catawba Reservation, which was supposed to be wholly in South Carolina, and that made them change. So this area right here was given to South Carolina to make up for what we lost down here. There was a court case that decided that. It started in 1766 and it ended in 1772. The court case was tried in London. And that's where we got the new acquisition.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good question. Anything else?
Yes.
Could you hear a lot of references about taking prisoners down to Charleston?
Yes.
What called for taking prisoners to Charleston? Is that if prisoners were going to stand trial? Were there regional jails as well?
There were some regional jails. Every district had their own jail. That wasn't made them a district, but they were sent down to Charleston for various reasons. The captives from Cambridge, they were jailed, and they were let out, but they had to sign, they paroled first, saying that they would not pick up arms again to fight against the Patriots. And one of those fellows did, James Lindley, and he was caught later on, and he was hung as a result of that at 96.
Hanged.
Yeah.
That's not the way we do it in upstate.
Same result.
Yes.
Why don't you guys skip over so much about the Cherokee land and why and how it was affiliated with?
Right. Mr.
What's his name?
He cut me off a little bit. I was just getting ready to go all into that. And really, go back to my map. Let's go to that. Okay. The Cherokees were absolutely crucial to the 96th district. You know, and I told you about the clash of cultures. From 1524, when Lucas Vasquez de Ayllon sailed into Winyah Bay, the first thing he did was he invited 60 Winyah Native Americans onto his ships. He promptly picked up anchor and he sailed into the Caribbean and sold them as slaves. So this is first contact. And I frequently say, if there are any Spaniards in the audience here, we'll talk later. But the Spaniards could not have been worse ambassadors for European culture. And there was a 150-year period of retribution, recrimination, retaliation. There were such bad actors on both sides. I told you that it was security that was paramount in wanting to determine for ourselves how to deal and establish security. The British colonial policy failed. It was not establishing the security in the backcountry. The Patriot response was extreme. And we talk about the William Tennant, Drayton, and Hart commission that went through the backcountry trying to line up, get patriots to sign up for the oath of association to associate with the other patriots in South Carolina, in the United States. A leading reason that William Henry Drayton gave for the patriot cause was the extirpation of the Cherokees. And that's what happened. Those 70 men who escaped at the Battle of the Great Canebrake, they went straight into Cherokee territory. They went to the plantation house of Richard Parris, who was not supposed to be in Cherokee territory in the first place. And they were using Richard Parris's plantation as a staging ground for the Cherokees, who literally went on the warpath in June and July of 1776. And those escaped Tories led a raid into Lawrence County, July 15th, 1776. 102 Europeans dressed as Cherokees. These are Scophilites. 102 Scophilites and 88 Cherokees attacked a fort where settlers were in for protection. They surrounded that fort at midnight. A brisk 2-hour gunfight ensued. The defenders of the fort had enough of that. They burst open the doors, they charged out 10 abreast, and they broke that charge. And this is the type of activity that was going on. There were 61 settlers killed along the Cherokee Territory border in the summer of 1776. And the reaction was extirpation. Those 16 Cherokee towns in South Carolina, all the huts were burned, homes were burned, the orchards cut down, the fields trampled.
What does extirpation mean?
It means total annihilation. It means genocide. It means murder. And 2,000 Cherokees were killed, men, women, and children, shot on sight in the Cherokee War of 1776, which was the greatest massacre in the American Revolution. Clash of cultures. They could not understand each other, and it had deadly consequences. The Cherokee tribal law, their clan system, was at total conflict with the European. What made perfect sense to the Europeans made no sense to the Cherokees, and vice versa. And this is a very tragic time for the American Revolution.
Thank you.
Yes, Bobby.
Paul Grant, outstanding as usual. Paul, if you get that, hold on just a second.
Well, I can't stop it. I have to go moving it back. Sorry.
Grant, the gentleman asked a perfect question, and if you can you roughly show us with your pointer what you consider the Cherokee Territory and what you consider Camden District in the Waxhaw?
If you could go to my slides, I just got it.
Okay, that'll take me a minute.
That'll help. Thank you.
Durant, can I say?
Yes, yes.
Okay, if you don't remember anything today about natives, remember this one thing. The biggest clash of culture was the fact that Native Americans, including Hawaiians, which were given native status in 1986, is that both cultures of natives do not recognize ownership of land. That is your basic culture. So obviously, you know, as a European thing, we want our land, we pay for it, we own it, and as long as I keep up my taxes, It's in my family, and you don't own it.
That's a very good point, and that's absolutely right. The Cherokees did not have personal property of anything. They had a communal lifestyle. But this is one very clear example of the thought processes between the two. Yes?
And if I may add another comment about Native Americans. Yes, the Cherokee, they had their own particular area. That was their area of concentration where they lived and they inhabited. Of course, there were also other indigenous groups that lived in South Carolina. Another major one were the Catawba. I've got it for you there, Robert. Right up there, the Catawba. Now, they did have their own set-aside reservation that had been negotiated back after the French and Indian War, right? That was, again, artificial boundaries, but that did not prevent white settlement on their lands. Now, what's interesting is that during the Revolution, the Cherokee were aligned with the British. The Catawba had aligned themselves with the Whig patriots. Part of the reason why is the complications of Native American diplomacy. The Cherokee and the Catawba had been traditional enemies. And this was a way of one group being tacitly warring against another group, in that sense.
Thank you. This is Robert Riles from Fort Mill.
Yes. Oh, she raised her.
We had visited the Star Fort at 96, but I can't recall much about it right now. Was the presence of that fort relevant to any of this story?
The Star Fort came much later. It came after Charleston fell, and that definitely is another topic. Yes.
This Cherokee land, was that hard labor or low labor, or what treaty was demarcated that?
Well, the treaty that demarcated that was the Treaty of Charleston in 1763. The bottom line there, the bottom border, this right here was established. It was supposed to be a point from the Wicks Corner, which was the furthest surveyed area in the state, and a line going to the southwest to the Savannah, northeast to the Reedy. That line was drawn or established. It was surveyed in 1765 by John Pickens, Andrew Pickens' brother. When they finished the survey on the Reedy River right here, they were met by Lord Tryon, the royal governor of North Carolina, and he promptly drew this line. The border between Greenville County and Spartanburg County was drawn by the royal governor of North Carolina. And Lord Tryon promptly claimed all this area for North Carolina. Spartanburg County for 6 years was in North Carolina. So that's what was resolved in that court case in London in 1772. You study the study of the county lines, the state lines. There's all kinds of history that is unlocked by studying those boundary lines. He's taking the mic from me, folks.
No, the people of the state of South Carolina is because of the top of reservation.
Yes, it is.
So people like this,
yes,
surveys were coming this way, they're gonna go straight across. And the Catawba said, we do not want to be in North Carolina, we will be in South Carolina.
I think I said that. Yes.
Isn't there a portion of land that the Cherokee gave to George Paris, Richard's son?
Yes, well, Richard Paris, because he was settling on Cherokee territory, John Stewart, the Indian agent, arrested him, and he went to trial in 96. And Richard Paris had 2 wives. He had a European wife, Rhoda, with 3 children, and he had a Cherokee wife, and he had at least 1 child from her named George. So, as
that was illegal.
as a result of that trial, the land was awarded to George. And so George had possession as a Cherokee, but he sold that land as a European.
Right.
And there was a lot of that that went on back during that time. That's right.
And a dual identity did. All right, let's make this our last comment or question.
What evidence puts the battle site on the west side of the Reedy versus the east? I mean, is it archaeology or?
Well, that's one, you can't do archaeology in floodplains. You know, that land is silted over 2 feet since this battle. So there's and that's the question that's asked frequently. Based on the map, if you look at everything that's on the north side of the Reedy, there's no flat land there. That's all, rolling hills. Plus the fact that in 1876, the Hopkins family planted that alley on their property. Now, they had owned the property since 1834. They would have known people who fought in this battle. Samuel Harrison was their neighbor now. And the fact that they established traditionally in the Hopkins family for 150 years has maintained that that is the spot where the actual battle occurred. But we have not been able to get any artifacts there because it's silted in so much.
Let's look at our 6 actors now. Y'all come on back out, will you? We have Red Adams here. From East Springs, South Carolina. We have Robert Riles from Fort Mill, South Carolina. Stacy Ferguson of Camden. Stacy's the assistant director right next door, the historic Camden Foundation. And for this drama between a mother and her 14-year-old son, we found a mother and her 14-year-old son. And Evan Hicks. And last but not least, to a native of Hawaii, a Camden resident, Paul White. We thank all of you for being here today. We're really pleased with the attendance. You just don't know. And we hope that this is getting your day off to a good start. The 250th anniversary of all of these events that we've been talking about is right now, November, December, going back to 1775. We have a few refreshments in the back. Those of us who put all this together are happy to hang around and talk. And Ricky?
Historic Camden, please?
Yes, we refer to you Historic Camden. Stacy really refers you to Historic Camden, because she's the assistant director. For those who don't know, all you have to do is walk 100 yards and you're on their property. And then it's a huge and wonderful place that's been here so much longer than this facility has been. The city of Camden didn't open this place for about 5 years ago, Ricky?